You need to understand email deliverability, so this video is for non-technical beginners just like me, and it's going to teach you everything that you need to know. And we're going to make sure that your cold emails, and most importantly your primary emails, never end up in spam again. Now the reason I know this stuff and I'm so good at it is because a couple of years ago, all of our company's primary emails started to go to spam. We have over 50 employees, so obviously it was horrible when we started learning that our customers were getting emails from our team that were in their spam box. That was a horrible look. So what did we do? I looked for experts, couldn't find a single person that understood email deliverability that could come in and solve the problem for us. So I became an expert myself, and I'm going to teach you everything that I know so that this never happens to you. So what had happened was somebody was spoofing emails from our domain name, and if I knew about DNS records and a single fix, this never would have happened. And I'm going to show you exactly how to implement that fix in this video. All right, so let's talk about email deliverability. There's really two important factors when it comes to email deliverability. There's email reputation, and then there's email configuration. Now let's start with reputation because honestly it's easier to understand. So reputation is how much that inbound email server trusts your email. Do they trust the copy? Do they trust the domain? Do they trust the server that it's coming from? So let's break those down a little bit further. Server reputation is probably the most important thing, and this is why most people, most email marketers, most businesses, most cold emailers use Google or Microsoft Office. Frankly, because they have trusted email servers. But some people use their own servers, some people use Zoho, some people use Apple servers. Not every server is the same. Not every IP is the same, and the emails aren't necessarily treated equally. So my advice to you for servers, stick to Google, stick to Microsoft Office, especially for your primary emails. This will nearly make sure that they end up in the inbox every time, especially when you're sending to another Google or another Office inbound server, which is almost 90% of the time. So the next thing to think about is domain reputation. So our main domain, otterpr.com, this is where all of our employees communicate with our clients, communicate with our hot leads, take sales calls from. So we want that domain to be as pristine as possible. This is why I always recommend never cold emailing from your primary domain. Always purchase secondary domains and cold email from there. You want to protect your primary domain with your life. Now, if your domain is known for spamming, if your domain ends up on a blacklist, you could be in a lot of trouble. So keep your domain clean. You never want your primary domain going to spam. I also recommend warming emails from your primary domain, especially when you first buy it. You should warm it for at least a month before you start sending emails, especially for all new domains. I'll share more about warming tools later in this video. So there's also sender reputation. Say there's Jay at otterpr.com and our new employee, Maggie at otterpr.com. Jay at otterpr.com has been around a lot longer, so they have a certain sender reputation, whereas Maggie's brand new. Her email address is not going to be treated as reputable as mine. So that's why it's important to warm new email addresses as well as they come in. If your primary domain is in trouble, it's starting to go to spam, you might want to consider warming many of the emails on that domain. The more emails that you set up and warm under that primary domain, the faster that it's going to build back a strong reputation and you're going to get out of spam. It's also highly recommended for any cold emails to hook them up to a warming tool like Instantly AI and to warm them for at least 2 to 4 weeks before sending. At the end of this video, I'll show you my favorite tool to check your email reputation and to make sure that you're not on any blacklists. I recommend doing this at least once a month. All right, now the fun part. Let's talk about email configuration. Now this gets a little complicated, so if I talk about something that you don't fully understand, please rewind, watch it again, and bookmark this video. So if you ever have trouble with DNS records and email configuration in the future, you can come back here and know exactly what to do. All right, so there's a lot of different records involved in configuring your email correctly. There's DKIM, DMARC, SPF, MX, BIMI records. We're going to talk about each of these, what their function is, and then how to create and implement them. All right, let's start with the most basic. This is the MX record. This is kind of like the address for your email inbox. So MX records, or mail exchange records, just kind of tell your emails where to go. It's the address that the email provider uses to assign it to a specific inbound server. If you don't have MX records, your emails will not know where to go. You will not be able to receive emails. Now, great and easy thing about MX records, if you're using Google or you're using Office, the MX records are going to be pretty much the same for every email. So you're not going to have to search too far or work to create these MX records. You can simply search them online, MX records for G Suite, and it will give you the MX records to input into your DNS, which I'll show you in just a little bit. All right, the next 3 records were really just created to prevent prevent email spam. Obviously, it's a massive issue nowadays, and you don't want anyone to spoof your emails, which is send an email as if it looks like it's coming from your company, but you didn't send that email. This is not good. That's why you need to have these next few records in place. And in fact, most inbound servers won't even accept emails anymore unless they have all three of these records. So you need to make sure that you have them. The first one, SPF record. Now this stands for Sender Policy Framework, and this is the most basic of the prevention of email phishing records. Now an SPF record basically just designates which IP addresses are allowed to send emails. And then the inbound server will check that IP address in the SPF against the IP address that actually sent the email. Now this sounds a little bit complicated, but SPF records are really very easy. They're actually installed by default if you're using G Suite or Office 365. Once you add an email address within that platform, it will typically authenticate it with an SPF right away and on its own. If it doesn't, you need to make sure that an SPF record is there. And if it's not, you can generate one fairly easily, and I'll show you how to do that using my favorite and easiest tool. Now, if that inbound server checks your SPF record against the sending IP and they do not match up, almost 100% chance that your email is going to end up in spam. So you need to make sure that it is aligned, which means the IP address on your SPF matches the IP address sending the email, and I'll show you how to do that. All right, the next record I want to just briefly touch on is DKIM. This stands for Domain Keys Identified Mail, and this is basically like a digital signature on your email. Now the interesting thing about DKIMs is each one is going to be different. Unlike SPF and MX records, which might be the same for everybody that's sending from Google or sending from Office, DKIM is going to vary each time. So you're going to want to create this if your email provider didn't create it for you automatically. So the first thing you're going to want to do is make sure that it's present. I'll show you how to do that in just a second. And if it's not, I'm going to show you how to create and add one. Now the DKIM holds a public key. That's that long key in the DKIM that's unique to your specific DKIM record. And when you send an email, it looks at that public key and it signs it with a private key. That's a little complicated, probably beyond the scope of this video, but it's important to know what the function is, and it's important to know how to check for it and create one if you don't already have one. The next record that we're going to be talking about is a DMARC record, and this is one of the newer records that's come out. And this one's actually really powerful because you don't just put it in your email, you can actually use this record to see deliverability reports for your emails. So for example, if you're monitoring your primary inbox and you want to see how inbound servers are handling emails coming from your primary domain, this is how you'll do it. And I'll show you how to do it. That way you can actually see how many emails are going into the inbox, how many are going to spam. Is it because of the SPF? Is it because of the DKIM? It's actually a really powerful tool. So DMARC stands for, and this is a long one, so I'm going to look at my notes, Domain-Based Message Authentication, Reporting, and Conformance. So a DMARC record, I'm going to show you how to generate, I'm going to show you how to check it just like everything else, but most importantly, I'm going to show you how to set up these reports and analyze these reports to make sure that your domain is actively healthy and it's sending to the inbox. Now the DMARC record actually uses the SPF and the DKIM to generate these reports, and it's very helpful because it actually gives you insights into whether this DKIM and the SPF records are working. And even if you don't use the reports, having a DMARC record in your email is a good sign for inbound servers. It says that this email is trusted, it's authenticated. So even if you don't use the reports that I'm going to show you, make sure that you include a DMARC record. And I'll show you how to turn off the report settings essentially. And I'll also show you how to not receive reports if you don't want to be getting those emails every week or every month. All right, last I want to briefly touch on the newest record, and this is a BIMI record. This one stands for Brand Indicators for Message Identification. And we recently just got one of these for our AutoPR domain. This is something that's mostly applicable on Google right now. And it's mostly for bigger companies that have trademarks, and there's an aesthetic purpose to it, but there's also a deliverability purpose. So if you have a BIMI record, you get a blue check next to your email on Gmail. You get your logo next to your email on all of your Google accounts. So it adds a layer of trust to the person receiving it, but it also adds a layer of trust to the inbound email server who's receiving that email. So if you have a BIMI record, there's a much better chance that your email is going to end up in the inbox every time, and that the person receiving it is going to open that email every time because it's got the check and it's got your logo. Now I did a video on how to get a BIMI record, what's involved in it. It is a little bit expensive. You do need to have a trademark. So bigger companies who are listening to this, definitely watch that video and see if you can get a BIMI. They're still relatively new, so only giant companies have them. So we were very happy when we finally got ours. It gave us a blue check mark. It adds a massive layer of credibility. All right, now let's walk through some of these tools to check whether your records are in place and then generate those records. For this video, let's go into my leadgenj.com domain. I host most of my domains on Cloudflare, but this will look relatively the same no matter which DNS or domain host that you're using. I like Cloudflare because they make it really easy to come in, edit your DNS, manage all of your domains at once. once. So here's my DNS records. Here's all of the records attached. So there's a lot of different types of DNS records. Most of them are just TXT records that you'll be adding. So let's look at what some of these look like. So this is what a DKIM record looks like. It is a TXT record. It will always start with default __ domain key. And then the content is always going to be a long key. Remember, this is a public key and it's going to be unique. So v = DKIM1 and then your public key. If you do not see a DNS record that looks like this within your DNS records on your domain, I'm going to show you how to add them. But let's look at some other ones and make sure that they're all present. All right, here are the MX records that we spoke about. So this is my root domain, leadgenj.com. Now this is obviously set up with G Suite and Google to send and receive messages through Google. These MX records are going to be the same for just about anybody using G Suite. All right, so this is the MX records and the DKIM record. Now let's look at some more records that I have listed here. Also a TXT record _DMARC is how these always start. Let's click on edit so you can see what these look like. There's a lot of different values here and we'll review some of them once I show you how to create a DMARC record, but just know that this needs to be present and I'll show you what these values actually mean. All right, coming on down, we see another TXT record for SPF. So this SPF record was automatically added from Google when I transferred it to Cloudflare and I integrated it in G Suite. We've got an SPF record here for my root domain and we have an SPF record here for my subdomain. So just know that you can create subdomains under your primary domain and send and receive emails from them, but you need additional sets of records. Now for the learning purposes here, I don't send any emails from drjfeldman.com, but let's go ahead and add DNS records as if I was. So let's check to make sure those records are present. Okay, so this is set up to send and receive emails through Google. Awesome. The MX records are in place. Let's check the TXT records. And we've got a DMARC record in place. We've got a DKIM record in place. And we've got multiple SPF records in place, which means it's authenticated to send emails through all of these different IP addresses. All right, so now I'd like to show you a tool that you can use to check your different records and to create them. This is called EasyDMARC.com. Highly recommend them. They have a lot of really great free tools where you can create and check all of your DMARC records, SPF records, DKIM records, BIMI records, and you can monitor your DMARC reports within here. This tool is not free, but if you have a primary domain that actually matters to you, I highly recommend signing up for a DMARC report tool so you can make sure that your emails are compliant and get reports when they're not. And as you can see, it breaks down all of the subdomains that I'm using to send and receive emails from. It breaks down whether it's passing my SPF checks and my DKIM checks. And as you can see, this email is good, this email is compliant. All right, so let's go into tools and create a DMARC record and walk you through this process. So let's start by making sure that a DMARC record actually exists for leadgenj.com. Let's go ahead and look it up. DMARC, awesome. It looks like it does have the DMARC record here. There are some warnings detected and I'll show you what these mean and why they're not important. Your domain's none quarantine policy doesn't protect against phishing and spoofing, and same thing with the subdomain. So let's go ahead and create a DMARC record. I know I already have one, but I'm going to show you how this works. So policy type, none, quarantine, reject. This is how it handles spoofed emails. Now, because it's not my primary domain and I don't want to receive reports all the time and I want all of my emails to go through, I usually keep this selected as none. Now, if you're using a BIMI record or this is your primary domain, you might want to think about using quarantine or reject. This is how it handles potential spoofing. Now for the reports, you do need to list an email address here. This one listed just goes to this aggregate report tool in EasyDMARC. But if you don't have an aggregate report email to send these to, you can just use your primary email account. Your subdomain policy, you'll set here as well. Again, I just keep mine as none monitoring because it's not my primary domain. SPF alignment identifier, I leave as relaxed. I leave these intervals as the same, and then you'll also put your delivery email address here. Now, your failure reporting options. If you want to get reports, you can hover over these to see which ones it will send. I don't like to receive these reports, so I keep this at 0 to only receive reports if the DKIM and the SPF do not pass or align. So then you'll go ahead and generate that DMARC record, and now it gives me the TXT record and the value. So here's how I would actually implement that. Let's go ahead and copy this record value and go back into Cloudflare. Now, if you're managing your DNS records in Cloudflare, you'll go ahead and add record, change type to TXT. Now the name for your DMARC record is always going to be _DMARC. It will automatically add your primary domain afterwards. I like to change my TTL to 5 minutes. That means it will propagate faster, and then you can paste the content right here and then go ahead and save that record. It's not going to save it because I already have a DMARC record in, but this is how you would add it. Now let's go ahead and check SPF records. Now, most of your email providers will automatically give you an SPF record to add, or it will add it for you. But let's check and make sure that I have SPF records that are in here and make sure that my IP addresses are approved. Awesome. Here's all the IPs that I'm able to send emails from, mostly including Google. Now, as you can see, the most important part of the SPF record that I have here is include spf.google all. So this will allow all emails from Google. Now, if I were sending emails from a different IP address, I could come into SPF Record Generator, put the domain in here, leave these as yes, put that IP address right here. I would include Google, especially if you're using Google, and then generate an SPF address right here. All right, now about half the time you will have to add your own DKIM record. So let's go ahead and look up the DKIM record that I have here. Awesome, it has found a DKIM record, and it's found a DKIM record for my subdomain. Perfect. If I wanted to create one, here's how that works. Lead gen J, selector S1, key length 1024. This is how long you want your key to be. I usually just leave this at 1024. Now to input this, you will highlight s1._domainkey.com. And when you add a record, you'll come in, you'll do txt, add that here, and then you'll go ahead and paste the content of that right here. And now you can save your new DKIM record. Now, BIMI records are much more complicated, and I encourage you to watch the video that I have about generating a BIMI record. But let's go ahead and check BIMI records on otterpr.com. This is the only domain that I have that actually has a trusted BIMI record. And you'll see the logo validation here. This is the logo that shows up on all of the new emails, and it's got the BIMI record value. This was purchased from ntrust.net. But watch the entire video on generating BIMI records to further understand how to get and implement one of these BIMI records. Now, if you're a power user, you're doing a lot of cold email, or you've got a really high value primary email address, I highly recommend signing up for EasyDMARC to use all of their premium tools. Their monitoring, their aggregate reporting, it can save you a lot of money by jumping on issues quickly and using their tools to monitor and improve domain reputation. All right, next I want to show you a free tool that you can use to check whether you're on any blacklists. It will check your domain reputation, and it will give you a report on your email deliverability across multiple inboxes. So this is called mail-tester.com, and it's a really simple tool that's been around for a long time, and we use it about once every month. So all you have to do is copy this email address that's here, and I'm going to show you how I actually send this. I'm in my j@otterpr.com email, my Gmail account. I'm just going to copy and paste that to address right here. I'm going to write test, and I'm going to go ahead and send that email. Now, I do have a 30-second delay, so I'm going to wait just a minute here, and then I'm going to check my score. Now, there's not a lot of ways to generally monitor your email blacklists, and there's a lot of other variables that can affect your email deliverability that aren't discussed here, such as the copy in your email or the content of your email signature. There's just a lot of factors that sometimes are beyond your knowledge and your control. So I recommend doing this so you can get an insight into those different factors. It will also tell you how different inbound servers handle your email and what they think about your email. All right, so I just checked and it looks like I got a 9 out of 10. Now it breaks down a couple of different things here. The content of my message is okay, so this will tell me whether my signature was bad or not, so definitely worth checking here. Spam Assassin will decide if the email qualified as spam or not. It runs it through a spam checker. This will also say whether or not your DKIM was valid, your SPF passed. All of these are good. This will show me all of my authentication, my SPF record, my DKIM record, my DMARC record. Everything here is aligned. All right, these are minor infractions, images without alt text in the message body, and that my message doesn't contain a list unsubscribe header, which I do not want because this is not going out to a list. But as you can see, these are yellow infractions, not red. Here I have a red one. These are all the blacklists where your emails can appear. Sorbs is one of the most notorious one. My guess is if you've been around for a while, you're probably in Sorbs. Now, we've been on a lot of these at one point. So there are ways to get off, specifically by rebuilding your email reputation and with time. You will just come off of these blacklists. If you're on too many of them, such as Spamhaus, which is another really popular one, you have a very high chance of your emails going to spam, which is not good. Lastly, it'll check for broken links within your email. You'd be surprised how many people have broken links in their email signatures. So please test this using Email Tester at least once a month. You're going to get a lot of insights that you probably didn't already know about. All right, the last thing that I want to show you is how to set up email warming within Instantly. But not just the email warming. This tool does a great job of monitoring your blacklists, monitoring your DNS records, all for free. So once you add an email here to your email warming system, just by adding new, following the steps to get that integrated, you can click this button here to test domain setup. And this will show you, look, I had one domain fail DNS, DMARC not found. This is for a subdomain that I was experimenting with, but all of the other ones are good. Now let me show you one other very cool thing. Let's open up one of these, and this shows me my inbox health. 99 warm-up emails received, 400 sent, 6 saved from spam. This is increasing my domain reputation as long as it runs. And on the right-hand side here, we see the health of this sender, of this domain inbox. As soon as this health drops under like 95, you should be worried. You should stop sending outbound emails and only warm the inbox until it gets back up to 100. All right, so let's go back in, and I want to show you one more thing. If you come all the way down in the warming settings, this will monitor your blacklists and warn you if something does in fact hit a blacklist. This is a really important thing that you should be doing, especially with your primary domain. If you get on a blacklist, you should stop sending cold emails immediately. You should look into where those emails went wrong, and you should double down on email warming. There's also certain services and vendors that can reach out to those blacklist directories for you and get you off of those lists faster. All right, I hope that was a helpful walkthrough of email configuration, of email reputation. I hope you enjoyed the resources and the tools that you learned about. They're all going to be linked down in the description of this video. And if you want to learn more about cold email and lead generation and marketing, make sure that you're subscribed to this channel so you don't miss another one. I'll see you in the next video.